Hello again as we continue our conversation about interpretation. So, if the goal of observation is to see clearly what the text says and how it says it, the goal of interpretation is to understand the message that the text is communicating. And the key words in this process of interpretation are evidence and inferences. I want to speak to you briefly about each of those. Evidence, what it is and how you build it, and inferences, what they are and how you come to them. But I want to give you this important preface. As we talked about in the previous video, your interpretive assignments will be built around the choice of a focus question. So it's important that you choose your interpretive question well. Make sure that the question you choose is not a rabbit trail or something that's peripheral to the main message of the text, no matter how interesting a detail it might be. Make sure that the question, when you answer it, will enrich and enhance your understanding of the main message or the principal thrust of the passage. So let's talk about evidence first. Our goal in interpretation, as in observation, is to let the text itself direct us, rather than bringing to the text our presuppositions and preconceived ideas about it. So because of that, because we want the text itself to lead, our interpretation is an evidence-based interpretation. Now, there are different kinds of evidence that you can consider in your interpretive work. The first of those is context, and it will always be your starting point. What does the context offer in terms of evidence that points toward an answer to your interpretive question? But other kinds of evidence include word study, grammatical matters, historical cultural background information, canonical testimony, etc. And you'll choose the kind of evidence you present based on what kind of question you're asking. For example, if you're asking a definitional question, that is, what does a word or a phrase in the passage mean, then obviously you're going to employ word study as one of your interpretive resources. If you're seeking to understand some historical cultural element that's present in the text or behind the text, then you're going to consult commentaries and Bible dictionaries for the pertinent articles related to that element. But the important thing to remember is this: any evidence that you present in your interpretive work should have a direct bearing on the interpretive question that you have posed. There's a direct relationship there. So the sequence is this: a well-defined, well-selected, significant interpretive question is probed by presenting evidence that is directly related to that question. And you'll see more about this as you actually practice this week. Now, the second half of interpretation, evidence goes in the first column. But once you've presented the evidence, then you're going to draw inferences based on that evidence. Inferences are simply mini conclusions or initial or tentative conclusions that you draw about the evidence you have presented. So there should be a direct horizontal relationship between the evidence in that first column and the inference that you draw in the second column. The inference should be directly related to the evidence. and it should speak directly to the question that you are asking. So we can expand the sequence of interpretation then in this way. A well-selected, significant interpretive question is probed by presenting evidence that is directly related to that question. And from that evidence, then, inferences are drawn that point back toward an answer to your interpretive question. So once you have presented all your evidence and made your inferences based on that evidence, go back and review it all. Review your work. Notice what the interpretive options or possibilities are that can be discerned in the evidence. In some cases, there'll be just one clear interpretive line. In other cases, there may be multiple lines or multiple trajectories, multiple possibilities of interpretation that have come to light as you've done the work. If there are multiple options, list those and summarize the evidence for each. Interpretive possibility or answer, possible answer A, and here's the evidence for it. Interpretive possibility B or potential answer B, and here's the evidence for it. Then conclude your work by weighing and evaluating those options and choose the one that seems to have the best support from the evidence. And then restate your question, the thing that was driving this whole exercise from the beginning, and state in 1 or 2 sentences your initial or tentative answer to that question. And remember, as people who adopt a stance of interpretive humility, it's good to express our interpretive conclusions in a humble way. Maybe you'll want to say, based on the evidence that I have presented so far, this is my understanding of how to answer this question at this point in my journey with this passage, leaving open space for further learning and perhaps further refining of your answer. So God bless you as you begin the interpretive process this week.